Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Ward 8 CED Steering Committee meeting. Really glad that you're joining us on a lovely Friday morning. Thank you for being here. It's an exciting time for us. Not only has work been going on for many months, but the work is really starting to accelerate. So very excited about both the reports you'll hear from today and the updates that you'll get. So it's my pleasure as co-chair with my partner, Kim Ford from Ruth from Martha's Table. I'm not sure she's able to join us this morning, but or she may join a little bit late. Apologize for any of the logistical challenges getting the Zoom invite, but for those of you that are here, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Mustafa. He'll both introduce some of the partners this morning that are going to join us, and then probably give us a little bit of an update on how things are going. So Mustafa, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara, and again, appreciate your leadership. Thank you. So we have an opportunity today to talk more about the operational part of the planning process. As the last meeting, we had the launch in January, and we're really in the midst of actually implementation. So we want to share with you an update on that, but we'll also share with you the partners that are now involved with the planning process. That's going to add a lot of value to what we're doing and allow us to have capacity to do a planning process that's going to make sense. So the first person I want to introduce to talk about their partnering role is David Bowers, who is the Vice President of Enterprise Community Partners. So Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, many thanks, Mustafa. I appreciate it. I'm going to pull up something here on the share screen. And I'm hearing somebody has, I think, a radio or something going on in the background. If folks may be able to mute, that would be helpful. Great. So thanks, Mustafa. Good to be here with everyone. Was asked to take just a few minutes to walk through a little quick overview of who we are and a little bit of what we'll be doing in the work here. Again, I'm David Bowers, the Vice President and Market Leader for the Mid-Atlantic region for Enterprise Community Partners. So for those who may not know, let me just take a couple of bullets here on who we are. Here's our mission around making home and community places of pride, power, and belonging, and platforms for resilience and upward mobility. We develop and deploy. We've got a programmatic aspect to enterprise. We operate really across three buckets, if you would. A solutions bucket where we do programming and community support. We have a policy arm as well. We do policy type work. We also have a capital division where we actually deploy capital, pre-development acquisition, equity financing as well. And we have a communities division. One of my colleagues is on the line today, Marcos, Enterprise Community Development, that owns and operates 13,000 affordable homes mostly in the Mid-Atlantic region. Providing housing for over 22,000 people, and that includes nearly 3,000 affordable homes in DC, 1,400 plus in Southeast Washington. So our 40 years, we've invested over $61 billion in touching about 793,000 homes, affordable homes. And that includes over 100 million of financing, touching over 3,300 affordable homes in Ward 8. So we're a national organization with 11 offices around the country. Our Mid-Atlantic office covers Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And okay, let's see. I am not sure. Okay, why this wants to freeze up on me, of course. So for our enterprise right now, we're in the midst of a new strategic plan that has just rolled out, and we have three main pillars. Advancing racial equity and upward mobility, increasing the housing supply, and building resilience and well-being of the built environment, as well as the people in the communities who live there. So again, I mentioned that I am with our Mid-Atlantic office covering the areas that I talked about. Our key areas of focus are preserving and producing affordable housing, bridging racial equity gaps in Baltimore and DC, and growing the pie of resources available for affordable housing, both public and private. And so for us, this work that Mustafa and all of you all are involved in really ties a lot into particularly our Bridging the Racial Equity Gap in Baltimore and DC. And so for our work in DC, this really ties well into one of our strategic focuses here for our local office. So what will we be providing specifically? So there are going to be 3 different arms of enterprise that are going to be involved in this work. We have an advisory services arm, Enterprise Advisors, which is essentially a fee-for-service kind of mission-oriented consulting arm of enterprise that has done work in over 200 communities around the country, working with private sector as well as public sector agencies. So there are kind of 3 main deliverables here for this part of our family. There'll be a service provider and investor assessment, drawing from resident feedback gathered through the resident engagement process and the streetwise surveys. Our colleagues will be assessing the extent to which service providers and investors are coordinating and leveraging resources to respond to resident identified needs, taking into consideration, obviously, COVID-19 impacts. There's also going to be a small business assessment, working closely with the small business subcommittee. Our team will assess the extent to which programs, policies, and resources drive inclusive economic development and adequately serve the needs of Ward 8 small businesses at varying stages of business growth. This assessment will focus on, in particular, minority and women-owned businesses and entrepreneurs, and include both qualitative and quantitative analysis, a gap analysis, and some best practice examples. And then a framework for action. We'll develop a deliverable that will be designed to help close the gaps identified in both the service provider and small business assessment. And we'll develop a menu of actionable steps that could be considered, including programs, financing, and partnerships that could be implemented to fill in some of the gaps. In addition to that piece, there's a team here, a real estate development, financing, and policy technical assistance. So the team that works with me, our Mid-Atlantic team, Monica Warren-Jones from that team, and Melissa Bondi, our state and local policy director, and Monica's our director of capital solutions, will really be involved to help utilizing the deep connections that we have in both the development and capital markets. We'll participate in the process and provide an entry point not only to financing products and services that we have and deploy, but we'll share knowledge about the dynamics of the local real estate market and kind of be a thought partner along with others who are at the table about what we're seeing in both the capital markets and the real estate development market, just writ large, beyond even just what we do specifically or provide. So providing some of that insight and some of that assistance on affordable housing, community development related issues, also taking place at City Hall. Our state and local policy director, Melissa, who I mentioned, very involved, our office very involved in a lot of the policy work going on around some of these issues. And so we'll be be one of the kind of ears, eyes, and voices, if you would, as part of the larger collaboration here. And helping to provide some guidance and technical assistance that we hope will be helpful for some of the planning efforts. And then finally, the resident engagement piece. I mentioned that Enterprise Community Development owns and operates service-enriched affordable housing units. And I mentioned we've got nearly 1,500 in Ward 8 alone. And so we are anticipating and have already started to have conversations about how to help identify potential resident candidates who could be trained and hired for some of the outreach process. And they can also be, obviously, our residents, just part of the base of other residents in the community that are being interviewed for what their thoughts and views are, and data from some of the resident surveys. So with that, I think I will stop and share, and I will turn it back over to Mustafa. It's good to, and thank you all again. Mustafa, you're on mute, Doc.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Dave, could you talk about, from your perspective on a national level, why what we're doing in Ward 8 around this planning process is not only important, but unique in the sense of a bottom-up process?
Yeah, very. There are a couple of angles from what we've seen and our colleagues as our work around the country. One, as you said, there's a lot of talk about centering the voices of residents and participatory engagement, and so this is part and parcel, right in line with that. Really getting the voices of residents and kind of community-based stakeholders really driving a process is critical. I think what's also very interesting about the process is that it is a combination of an intentionality about engaging residents and also working with, again, stakeholders who work in and have a long history in the community. So that's critical. The other piece I think is really important is this notion of a really comprehensive approach, right? And so the fact that it's not just a housing play, or it's not just a workforce play, or an economic development play, that there's intentionality about thinking about things that include those also health aspects or educational aspects. And so I think that when people, I know when we looked at, and you see even who's on the line today, that you have a range of organizations who are bringing expertise from various walks. And so that notion of trying to take a comprehensive approach is really important. And then the last thing I'd say is that in our conversations with Mustafa and others who here on the line, I think the notion of this being a long-term play, and what I call kind of trying to build it into the code. So not trying to just create a little program or pilot effort that's a 1 or 2 or 3 year thing, and then that's it, but really trying to restructure how work is done, redoing building it into the code that and comprehensive approach is taken, we think is really important.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that.
Hey, Mustafa, quick question. So, David, one of the goals of the CED is to work on developing a community investment fund, and I know you guys are national and doing a lot of work, obviously in DC, really impressive, thank you, and nationally. Any thoughts on that sort of objective of getting investments into the community and building that community investment fund, and any sort of lessons learned or thoughts you can give us on that?
Yeah, sure. A few things come to mind, and I appreciate that question. In no particular order, priority one, there's a lot of money moving around, right? So there's that. Two, the money that's moving around, I don't think we should be fooled by the fact that a lot of money is moving around doesn't mean that the amount of money that should be moving around is moving around. What I mean by that is that if you're only used to having a dime, if somebody offers you a quarter, you're thinking, woo, that's a lot of money. But if they got $10 in their pocket, right, that you still a long way away. So I think both things can be true at the same time. But there's a lot of capital moving around where people are looking to make investments in communities, particularly in BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. So there's that. The second thing is that the notion of funds, FUNDS, these funds that get created, you're right, enterprises had experience developing funds, different types of funds targeted on affordable housing around the country and have some experience. One of the things we've heard is two things two takeaways. One, funds can help to leverage multiple capital sources. And so that can be a real advantage when you can get different types of players, foundations, local governments, state governments involved. And so funds can be a good way of leveraging dollars. One of the potential downsides of funds is that they can take a good chunk of time to create and stand up, and sometimes can be expensive in doing that, right? The legal fees and everything else, particularly the more partners you have, right? So, which is not say they can't be done, shouldn't be done, because they have been, but that is just one of the learnings that they could become, can take some time and can become expensive. And then the third thing I would just say is that I think being clear on kind of what the outcomes are that are desired from the use of the capital, and kind of what are the rules of engagement around the capital, right? Who's deploying the capital? Who can access the capital? How do you do it? How are you going to evaluate the effectiveness of where that capital goes, are some things. So kind of thinking with the end in mind would also be helpful.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the steering committee members? Because we want to be close to the time of So we have maybe one more question if anybody has it. If not, then I will want to introduce our next presenter, Professor Cook, who is a professor at the Georgetown Law School. He's a nationally recognized expert on community development. And so I would like for him to talk about the work he's been doing and how he's looking to add value to our planning process in Ward 8. So Professor Cook.
Thank you, Mustafa. I really appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Let me just share my screen. Can you guys see?
Yep, we got it.
All right, cool. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to speak. We're really excited about supporting this initiative. It's been consonant with my work in scholarship for a very long period of time. As Mustafa knows, I teach courses in community development, law and entrepreneurship, social innovation, a practicum that basically brings in clients, many of them community development partners, to basically provide a range of legal and business support for them across the semester. That practicum is being extended for a year, consistent with the center that I'll tell you about in a few seconds. I teach courses in cooperatives as well. We're in the process of standing up a center at Georgetown, the Center for Racial Equity and Democratic Economy. I have some capacity now. We're scaling our capacity over the next weeks and months, and intend to be operational by fiscal year. Our fiscal year starts July 1. By July 1, we tend to be fully operational. The Center for Racial Equity and Democratic Economy is a way of trying to create infrastructural backstop support for community development and planning initiatives that are about promoting racial equity and democratic economies, better distributions of wealth and income and opportunity in under and disinvested community. Our theory of change, quite simply, is that systemic problems require systemic solutions. And we have been dealing for quite some time with either episodic, siloed, compartmentalized approaches to dealing with problems that are quite pervasive, not only in Ward 8, not only east of the river, not only DC, but the region, the nation. And so we want to provide a service that attempts to kind of recalibrate the focus of academics and practitioners around long-term solutions to these problems, right? The traditional approach from the academy perspective has always been kind of service-oriented. We provide services with regard to legal counseling and consultation that lasts over the period of time that our client is retained. And after that month, 2 months, few months, whatever it is, we part ways, and then that's the end of the story. We want to try to do something different with this center by, from the beginning, understanding that these are long-term, problems that require long-term solutions and kind of perennial engagement. And so how do you put in place infrastructural support for long-term change? You've got to kind of be committed to that from the very beginning and have a plan that's organized around supporting community efforts around strategic planning that's long-term in its very orientation. So you guys are doing that and doing a wonderful job of that. It represents the best in practices of what's beginning to happen in community development and communities around the nation, and we want to be a part of supporting that. So our mission then is to partner with disinvested communities to build and scale racially inclusive, racially inclusive democratic economies through community wealth infrastructures, particularly resident-owned planning processes and community and worker-owned cooperative enterprises. For some reason, it's not letting me advance. Here we go. All right, cool. So the strategic support in particular to this initiative, we engage in research, education, and policy support around systemic solutions. So we want to provide support to you guys in kind of sharing best practices from around the nation and indeed the world as to what people are doing at the local level to impact larger structures and systems outside their communities in a way that delivers tangible benefits to those communities and similarly disinvested communities around the country. There are a lot of people who are engaged in local communities in what's called participatory budgeting. That is to say, a planning process that eventually looks at city budgets and dares to convene and construct, alternative budgets for cities to consider, and advocates on behalf of that to city councilmen, to mayor's office, and to the powers that be to engage in more equitable forms of allocation of tax funds to local communities. There is an initiative that the center will be very much a part of in kind of promoting what a cooperative economy looks like, what it looks like for local neighborhood enterprises to be connected to a larger economy of support for supply side or supply chain support, as well as working out the delivery of products and services to anchor institutions in order to support those enterprises. The center will be, very much kind of focused on, how do we understand the best practices out there, and how can we replicate those locally within our own communities. Organizational management best practices, we've already begun to provide Mustafa and the steering committee with some support with regard to best practices in organizing the management of the Ward 8 Community Economic Development Initiative. My research assistant, Lauren Harris, has already started the process of educating Mustafa and others around project management tools. And we hope to kind of expand that to other, technologies that can be brought to bear to facilitate this process and to make it as seamless and as efficacious and robust as possible. We intend to provide support to the subcommittee structure as well. Through our access to research, we will research particular issues, write white papers on, and deliver to subcommittees the kind of subject matter expertise to complement what David and Enterprise are doing and what others within the subcommittee are doing, so that we can make sure that those subcommittees have at their disposal the best and the latest research in constructing the recommendations for those subcommittees that will then flow up and be acted on by the entire committee and planning process. Expertise in particular around cooperative economies. We're very much focused at the center on trying to figure out how worker-owned enterprises and cooperative enterprises can play into a strategic plan to foster more equitable distributions of wealth and income and opportunity in communities. We've had a long history, unfortunately, of very extractive processes being imposed upon our communities, where governments, philanthropy, and also private industry have kind of looked at our communities as a location to extract dollars, income, and wealth for their own benefit, to the disadvantage, the detriment of our communities. We can only remedy that situation if we start to look at alternative sustainable economies that are focused on our residents, our people, owning the processes and owning the outcomes of those processes, and thereby having ownership in entities and enterprises, be able to capture that income and wealth, recirculate it in our community so that we can build our own internal economies and be in a better position to engage, some of the structural and systemic problems that whose source is really outside of our community. But we have to have that leverage and foundation in order to be able to do that. And we want to be able to play a part in helping this initiative to accomplish those objectives. So the importance of community planning process, David, touched on this a little bit, but just let me kind of, recap with regard to the kind of history of where we are. And I'll make this brief. Community development or community interventions with regard to trying to deal with problems of the gnarly, complex problems that exist at the intersections of poverty and race and class and gender and other forms of identity, have created different approaches in the past. The early approach was a social planning approach. It was a top-down approach in which basically the premise of the engagement with communities was that there were a set of experts, normally white, normally male, normally highly educated, working in seats of government in the private sector, who knew best about, and philanthropy as well, who knew best about what the community needed, right? And so these sectors would basically construct interventions based on their own knowledge and understanding of what the community needed. We call this the social planning era. It was very top down. The community organizing era succeeded that simply because of the weaknesses and deficiencies of that. It did not take in, the first system did not take into consideration the importance of local knowledge and tapping local knowledge and using it as the basis for more comprehensive policy planning. And so community organizing was about bottom up. You know, how do we organize the residents of our community in order to impact these larger questions of policy? But it was focused largely on policy. It gave way to, for various reasons, the community development era, which starts in the late 60s, early 70s. The community development initiative was very project focused. Community development corporations and community-based organizations came into existence to do particular projects, whether it was, construct affordable housing, whether it was working on some aspect of service delivery. And the project focus got away from kind of understanding the relationship between the limitations of project-based focus and these larger systems that controlled those local projects, right? What is unique about this community economic development planning, community planning that you guys are engaged in is that it is bottom up rather than top down, but it does not lose focus on the need for social comprehensive planning. As David spoke to and as Mustafa has spoken to, the interrelatedness between housing, workforce development, cooperative ecosystems, health, welfare, the role of arts in cultivating community and cohesion and healing and therapy. So it's very comprehensive in that regard, but it's organized from the bottom up as it should be. It is project focused, as the community development initiative has often been, but it is not project focused in a way that will exacerbate the fragmentation and the siloing that now takes place, in which we are kind of caught in our own individual projects without understanding how these projects connect more holistically to larger systemic problems and the need for solutions around those problems. So in a way then, this community economic development initiative, it is integrating the best of the social planning, converting it from top down to bottom up, community organizing, focusing on systemic problems, but also local problems in the way that they connect to those systemic problems. So the Center for Racial Equity and Democratic Economy wants to do all that we can do to support this initiative and to provide a kind of backstop to make sure that the final product that is produced is one that is capable of then being facilitated in circles of public policy and formalized into an action plan with next stages of engagement to make sure that we can robustly develop the community into one in which it owns the processes and the outcomes of those processes to better distribute wealth, income, and opportunity in our communities. Thank you.
Very exciting. I know some people were just joining, unfortunately, in the other link. I think it's our intention to share the slides with participants for those that haven't been able to hear both the presentation from Dr. Cook and from David Bowers. Mustafa, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
We've recorded this meeting thus far, and that recording will be shared on the website.
Beautiful.
Okay, well, and that's good. So we'll get the PowerPoint presentation from both Dave and Professor Cook. If this is your first time being on the call, if you can add your email address, name and email address in the chat, because if we didn't capture that, then we might not have you on file. So if you can put that in the chat, then we can make sure that everybody gets a copy of it. So again, thanks, Dave and Professor Cook, for your presentation. And we want to make sure that everybody that's going to be involved, from the steering committee to the community advisors, other partners, and the residents in particular, are really giving the information to understand where we're at, because we're in a place now where knowledge is power. And the more knowledge that we have collectively, the more power we have. Between unifying our effort and information is where we're most powerful at. So so what we're doing now is moving towards explaining the planning process itself and the different parts of it. We're, like I said earlier, we're going to be engaging now, so it's important that people appreciate that we're moving from talking, which we have done for a while, to now implementation. And implementation means that we got to be on the ground and we have to really engage residents in the true sense of the word. And that's going to be how this project is going to be measured, to the degree that we have engaged residents and we have a critical mass of residents involved. So to talk a little bit more about what this looks like in terms of our outreach effort, I'd like Dr. Adam to talk a little bit about the outreach.
Thank you, Mustafa, and thank you, Professor Cook and David and Tamara and everyone who's gone before to give us this incredible information as we move forward into implementation and mobilization. And this is like probably the moment we've all been waiting for, to really kind of start to roll out the plan and the process of the plan. And I think the most important part of that is getting the community engaged. So to start with, we want to show you the website for those of you who haven't seen it. Give some really, this is our entry point for everyone getting involved in the planning process. And basically what it does, it gives people a way to get in to do two things. One is to sign up for training to become a Ward 8 ambassador, and you can see that here. And right now, there are opportunities to be paid for training, and that's being provided by UPO. They're providing community economic development training, as well as the Streetwise app user training. And so we'll begin with that, and they must be 18 years or older to be part of that program. And you must, and I repeat, emphasize, you must be a Ward 8 resident. And so it would be great if we could, in this particular portal, train everybody all over the world. But for these purposes, this data collection process is for Ward 8 residents. The second option is for people to sign up to be on the subcommittee, and that's here on the website as well. And it's really important to understand that everybody can get involved. We have people from all over the ward, people who work in the ward, people who have a business in the ward, excuse me, people who just want to see the well-being of the ward. And that is where we want to have people to have opportunity to help be a part of the wealth creation movement. And so in terms of this mobilization effort, we've just begun to create a team, a coordinating team that would specifically be designed for resident engagement. Right now we have a team of people to actually, we're gonna we're in the process of creating an outreach engagement plan with Empower DC, and we're grateful for their expertise that they're bringing to the table. And we're also involved with Marion Barry's Youth Leadership Institute. And they are ecstatic about participating in these efforts. And it really is a great marriage between the mission and the vision of these organizations. And I think it speaks to the fact of us all working together. We're also utilizing the services of ACC to help us get the word out. And so this is a very important juncture that we want to stress to all of our steering committee members, our advisors, and our partners. This is where you can support the effort by sharing the information that we put out on our social media platforms, which is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, with your constituency. And we're going to be sharing all of the updates and information. So we're asking you to please utilize this, these outlets so we can reach a broader audience, and we cannot do it without you. We'll be sending emails and newsletters that you can also share with your constituency to garner support. And so I just want you to know that we are working diligently to get these things in the works. And those of you who already filled out the link online with, let me just pull out one of these forms. If you've already filled out a form, we do have your information. Now we're getting people in place to start responding and putting people in the groups that they would like to be in. And these are our subcommittees, as well as those persons who are interested in training. So we are working very diligently to make that happen. And of course, on the front end, connecting with people in the various neighborhoods of Ward 8 so that they could be familiar with the community, Ward 8 Community Economic Development Plan, and help them understand where they could fit in, and that they are just the absolute critical part of this. So I'm really glad that I think it's somebody's really excited about what I just said.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time and attention.
All right, thank you, Dr. Adams. And we're going to move along because we want to keep this meeting in an hour. And so, David, can you take us to the PowerPoint presentation? This is it. Is David using a different PowerPoint? Yeah. Okay, Dave. So you can put it up. Thanks. Right. So if you can go to the schematic on community engagement. Yeah, the other one, the one on community engagement. Yeah. We just want to go through this schematic because it really kind of captures all the entry point and activities that are happening in the planning process. So as Dr. Adams mentioned, in the front end where the recruitment takes place, we have our partners in ACC and Empowerment DC that's really doing what they do well, and that's engaging the residents to participate. We also have the support of the steering committee and partners, as well as the community advisors. And hopefully over the next week or two, they will be brought in so that they are more closely involved. The residents have a couple of options that we're going to present to them. One is having them very early in the process get on the Streetwise app so that they can do the asset mapping, which is really the first step of us doing data collection. And we want to get as many residents to engage in the asset mapping as possible because that gives us a rich, really real-time sense of what people are seeing in the community, and also gets them involved in the planning process. For those who are interested in the training, we have a 6-hour training that is going to be done through UPO's Leadership Academy. A lot of it will be virtual, and there'll be stipends involved. So we're starting to recruit for that. And our goal is by the end of June to have somewhere around 150 ambassadors who've gone through the training, understand community economic development, the principles and the philosophies of it. It can go out to the community and advocate and promote the need for us as a community to embrace community economic development. Again, that was going to be done over the next 4 months. So by the end of June, that's our goal. For some, as we develop our data collection process, if we are anticipating that we're going to be using surveyors, and we are looking for those surveyors to come out of the training of the CED, and that they be residents and that they also be given stipends to collect data. That's still in the process of forming, but we anticipate that there will be some opportunities there. We're going to encourage all the residents that we talk to get involved with the subcommittees so they can have input into making sure as we develop this planning process that their input is there. And we're particularly conscious of that population is considered at risk in crisis because they're the ones that have the greatest challenge individually and also put pressure on the community because of their situation. So the subcommittees all will address the nature and the strategies that can help those who are considered in crisis and at risk based on the self-sufficiency model that we'll be using to assess that. We're also looking for the subcommittees to do a SWOT analysis that will, really give us a sense of how all the different sectors see their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the sense is that we'll see some cross-section of commonality and that will help us begin to see some common agendas and move away from the fragmentation that we have as a system, because the system, human service delivery system, is very fragmented in Ward 8 and throughout the country. So to the degree that we can at least get people to begin to be on the same page, and Ward 8 will enhance how we work with people, how we improve the lives of people. All that is moving forward to a plan, and the goal is to have a plan in place by June of 2022. And there's a good potential we might do it sooner than that, but we have enough time that we're building in to do the data collection, have the community be involved with analyzing the data, and begin to put a documentation together that captures, everything that we've been looking at. And then that document becomes the roadmap for the community over the next 5, 10, 20 years. We are strategic in making sure, even in our outreach effort, that we're dealing with cross-generational or intergenerational representation. We're looking to make sure that the seniors at the back end are there at the table, and that we are looking at the youth population, particularly young adults between 18 and 25, that they have a significant role in this planning process, because at the end of the day, they have to own this. And if we're not positioning, particularly our youth population, to be involved in this planning process, then it really doesn't have the value that it should have. So that is the where we're trying to get to, and we encourage everybody, on the line to, be involved in whatever role that you think it makes.
We're having trouble hearing you, Mustafa. Mustafa, we can't hear you.
About the community.
Yeah, you're not muted, so.
We just lost you for a little bit there, Mustafa.
Okay. Well, I asked a question. Anybody have any questions about the Washington the resident engagement piece?
There was a question, Mustafa, around the role that you'd like some of the government representatives to play, and should they sign up for subcommittees? I think the answer is yes.
Yes, particularly in those areas that they have some hands-on involvement with. We really want that, and we encourage even cross-agency, kind of connection. But yes, that would be very helpful, and including and especially the public school system. We definitely want parents to engage, and we want educators to engage. And there is an education subcommittee that we anticipate will really help frame education in Ward 8. But if your organization, it makes sense if you have staff who are in the community that you spread their involvement out so that they're involved with each of the subcommittees, and as an organization, you have representation reflecting that. So it really is a matter of just people getting involved.
Right. And I would just say that I think the plan over the next, prior to the next meeting, is to really get a few of those subcommittees going. Obviously, the communication subcommittee is working. The planning, data collection subcommittee has been working really hard. The health committee, Calvin Smith and I have agreed to co-chair it. We are, we'll be looking at those that have expressed interest and that they're active and engaged in the ward to have a kickoff meeting within the next month. And I know, Mustafa, I know workforce, and I think education you mentioned is too, that we want to try to get kicked off in the next month. So we will be looking at those that have expressed interest in the various subcommittees, and work on getting a meeting scheduled before we get together in the next meeting. So we'll be reaching out to those who've expressed interest.
Thank you. Somebody asked a question about how is this different than the comprehensive plan that the city is putting together. There are some overlappings. The comprehensive plan is your traditional top-down planning process where the intent is to get as many residents citywide to participate by having input, but the decision-making process still lies at the city government level. Whereas we're creating something that is very much driven by the community's voice, and it's designed to give the community a voice, so that in the future, in addition to the city's comprehensive plan, we have a plan that is directed at Ward 8's future that we can ensure is a part of the comprehensive plan. Right now, whatever the comprehensive plan looks like, it doesn't necessarily reflect what's happening in the community now, because it's not focused that way. It's focused citywide and focused top down. So that's the difference, and that's the opportunity we have by doing this plan. We also have a small area plan going on in Ward 8 in Congress Heights that, again, there's going to be some overlapping. Congress Heights is a key strategic geographical area in Ward 8. And has a lot of the amenities and activity. So it's important that they, be identified. But at the same time, we need a plan that connects all the ward because we're all interdependent. And without a plan, we're, again, fragmented, which is not to our advantage. So all the planning that we're doing, and part of the opportunity with the planning process is to assess how many plans are out there, how many assessments are out there, so that we can begin to pull everything that we're doing in the community in a way that we can be better connected and benefit from everybody's effort. So this is a unique opportunity that we to take advantage of. It means that we'll just be better organized as a community, which is to our advantage.
Yeah, and I would just add on that, Mustafa, and say you're absolutely right that it's not the intention to replicate or duplicate, but to take information that's been collected already I think, as many have said, engage communities from the ground up and have the voice of the community there. And so I think in the number of the subcommittees, we talked about the SWOT analysis is really what's missing, what information don't we have, and what information do we get. We've got great partners with the Georgetown group and the economic enterprise group to help us with that. And so it's not the intention to replicate what's already been done. It's really the intention to supplement and to be very specific to the community that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I just want to add too that we have a very good working relationship with the Office of Planning that has been at the table since the beginning stages, and also the Health Department. And it was their initial really analysis around the health status in Ward 8 that really was somewhat of a driving force around us, really recognizing that we needed a plan for Ward 8 that looked at both economic development issues, but also health. And again, this is what makes this planning process somewhat unique, is because we really are looking at both health and economics in ways that we normally have done in the past. So the outcome, I believe, is going to be, again, more comprehensive, and it's going to allow the community to grow and develop both health-wise and economic-wise, wealth-wise. So are there any more questions based on the schematic or anything that we're talking about related to the planning process?
If you have a question, if you could raise your hand so we could notice you, because it's a long list.
I don't think everyone has the hand raise function.
Okay. All right. I just want to.
I have a question, Mustafa.
Go ahead.
Yeah, wonderful work, and I'm very impressed with everything I've seen here today. So thank you to everyone who's been a part of this, and Mustafa for your leadership. Having said that, I see there's a lot of benefits for focusing on Ward 8 residents, as it should be. But as a Ward 8 business owner, what can I do to participate?
Well, I mean, that's an excellent question, and you represent a population that we badly need and increasing. And so your involvement is very important, because you really measure the health of a community by its vibrance in the small business. If you're talking about employment takes place in small businesses in your community. So if you have a very poor small business base, then you're going to have high unemployment. And so also the mechanism to capture wealth in your community is done through small businesses, not through nonprofits. So right now we're top heavy with nonprofits, anywhere about 80%, 90% of the activity in Ward 8 is nonprofit. A healthy balance is 50-50. So we got work to do to get to the place where Ward 8 has that level of small business involvement. So your being at the table and your involvement in the subcommittees and any other way that you want to support is very critical. And at any point in time, if you want, we can sit and talk. And that would be a way for us to look at other ways to engage.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I also want to point out that we are developing and have developed a relationship with the district's small business office. They have been at the table also, and they have a capacity around helping the community embrace the whole notion of cooperative economics that is very important. I think it's important that we make Ward 8 the capital of cooperative business ventures, because that's, again, another tool for wealth building that we need to take advantage of it. So we're very glad to have them engaged, and we're looking to do workshops that can enhance our recognition of cooperative business ventures, because it is a very important tool for wealth building. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, Mustafa. Thank you. Thank you. This is Ambrose.
Okay.
First, just again, giving congratulations to you on this process. I do want to echo what Kimon put in the chat about the comprehensive plan, and that, and many of us on this call know that it is designed to eliminate community voice and community input into the economic development process, and which is the exact opposite of the process that you are creating. But I just wanted to point that one thing out, but I also wanted to share with you something that I testified about on the Oversight Committee for the Department of Health about developing health-centered communities. There is a first of its kind program module, and it was developed by MIT Professional Education, Harvard Medical School, and MIT Center for Real Estate, where leading figures from medicine, public health, urban design, and architecture come together to address the greatest challenge and opportunity, and that is facing urban and suburban planning today through the development of health-centered communities. So it's like the name of the module is Developing Health-Centered Communities, the Next Revolution in Real Estate, or the next revolution in economic development. And so it's a way of bringing those stakeholders together to develop all levels of economic development with a health lens, with a health-centered approach. And so I just wanted to share that with you as this process moves forward. You and I have talked about some things similar to that. Mm-hmm. But I am a little concerned with what Brother Kimon said about the oppositional stance of the comprehensive plan, which is antithetical to community input. And, right. And at some point in time, this body will have to take a stand on things like map amendments and things like that in the comprehensive plan, which allow developers to do pretty much what the hell they want. And so, I'm standing with you. So
yeah, and I appreciate that, and you're right. We've talked about that, but I think we gotta appreciate that until we create a process that we have enough critical mass of residents, particularly involved, that becomes our base of influence. And you well know that when you talk about power, our power is organized numbers, and so hopefully, one of the outcomes of the planning process is to have a plan that we can rally the community around. So when we sit with the city government and the mayor, we have not only a written plan that talks about where we want to go, we have residents who support it and will use their political will to make sure that the plan is respected, and that's the best you can do. And if we do that, then I think we'll be in a better position to influence not only the comprehensive plan, but also public policy in general. But in your point about the health piece, I would encourage you to really add that to the health subcommittee. And I think that's something that we can, put inside the health subcommittee as an option of looking forward in terms of how we structure the community around health issues. So I think that's a good idea. Okay, well, we're at almost 11 o'clock, and my desired goal has been to keep a really short meeting so people are interested in coming back. So these are going to be opportunity every month to report out, and in between there'll be subcommittee activities. Again, engage the website, and you have access to anybody who is playing a role, steering committee, and the project management team at any point in time if you need to get more information. So unless there's any pressing things that needs to happen, anybody from the co-chairs or the steering committee, anybody that's working on the project management team, if there's nothing to add, then I want to thank everybody.
I just wanted to echo what you said, Mustafa. If you have any comments or questions after today, feel free to go to the website, and there's a place where you can actually send a message. And we're, again, building the team so we can start to communicate with each other. So thank you for your patience and for your attendance. Thank you, Mustafa.
Thank you. And so thank